Hello, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. These are the top stories. Israel carried out a series of powerful strikes on the Syrian capital Damascus, cites protection of Druze minority. Farmers protest in Brussels over potential EU cuts to agricultural subsidies. Thousands of Afghan nationals are brought to the UK under a secret program after a data leak. A major escalation in southern Syria has drawn regional and international attention as violence involving the Druze minority intensifies. Israel has launched rare, high-profile strikes deep into Damascus, citing the protection of Druze civilians. The situation remains volatile despite diplomatic efforts to ease tensions.
Tensions have escalated in southern Syria, where deadly violence between Druze fighters, Bedouin tribes and government forces has engulfed the Druze majority city of Swaida. Since Sunday, more than 300 people have reportedly been killed, according to security sources, with the Syrian Network for Human Rights putting the toll at 169. Fighting broke out when Druze fighters clashed with Bedouin groups, prompting the Syrian army to deploy. But instead of restoring order, troops engaged in direct combat with local Druze forces. A temporary ceasefire declared on Monday quickly fell apart, and clashes resumed. Syria's health ministry reported dozens of bodies, both civilians and fighters recovered from a city hospital. The violence prompted a dramatic escalation on Wednesday when Israel launched a series of powerful airstrikes on Damascus, targeting the defense ministry and areas near the presidential palace. Israeli officials said the strikes aimed to halt government attacks on the Druze and demanded immediate withdrawal of Syrian forces from Swaida. One of the strikes was caught live on television. A Syria TV news anchor was abruptly interrupted mid-broadcast as a missile struck the Ministry of Defense in Damascus, underscoring the intensity of the Israeli campaign. The Israeli military confirmed it targeted Syrian command centers used to direct operations in Swaida. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the goal was to save our Druze brothers and eliminate government forces threatening the minority group. Israeli Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir visited the Syrian border for a situational assessment. In his first televised statement after Israeli airstrikes, Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara said that protecting Druze citizens and their rights is Syria's priority. Meanwhile, Israeli Druze demonstrators crossed the Golan Heights border fence into Syria in a rare act of solidarity as fires broke out in open fields and crowds chanted in the Druze village of Maid al-Shams. Despite warming ties with Washington, Syria's President Ahmed al-Shara remains deeply mistrusted by minority groups such as the Druze. On Wednesday night, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said steps had been agreed to end the crisis. By Thursday, Syrian state media reported that government forces had begun withdrawing from Swaida under a deal with Druze religious leaders. But with tension still simmering, Israel has not issued a response regarding the proposed ceasefire.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan urged US envoy Tom Barrack to help stop Israeli airstrikes in southern Syria, warning of rising tensions as clashes spread in Damascus and Swaida. Joining us now is Hakkı Öcal, a political commentator from Turkey. Mr. Öcal, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, what concerns did Hakan Fidan raise during his call with the US Special Envoy?
Hakan Fidan and actually everybody in Turkey is very much scared that Syria is also going to lose its territorial integrity like Iraq, and at one point the United States or one of the two Americas is going to divide Syria and rule that way. Turkey doesn't want this, and the foreign minister expressed his opinion in very strong terms, which seems that if Israel continues airstrikes in Syria, there will be some sort of response from Turkey.
And how is Turkey balancing its response with its NATO and US partnerships?
Well, Turkey is a NATO member, and Turkey has the strongest, second strongest army in that alliance. But that doesn't mean that Turkey is yet another American puppet. Turkey is not the Turkey that entered the NATO in 1950s. Turkey is totally different country now. The Turkey in 1950s didn't have any defense superiority or ability to maintain its economy without foreign support. Now, on both or three, actually, finance, the military, and the diplomatic spheres, Turkey declared some sort of independence from Europe, from the United States. Therefore, Turkey doesn't have to play a balancing game in these things. Turkey said, we don't want bifurcation or dismemberment Syria, period. And apparently, American ambassador in Ankara accepted that, and he asked the people in Syria that could be another tool of American imperialism to divide the country, the PKK extension Kurdish terrorists. The Druze are a different problem. They are very nice people. They are very docile people. They are pro-regime. They never had any political ambitions in the country. But we have 17 or 20,000 Druze living in Israel. They joined the Israeli army, and they joined the Israeli war against Muslims in Gaza, and Israel is using them, not the people actually in Syria, in Sweden, as their tool, but the people, the Druze people living in Israel. Luckily, the majority of the Druze people in all of the region are not going to be part of this American plan or Israeli plan.
Okay. And lastly, what impact have Turkish and US efforts had on the ground in Syria so far?
I tried to mention about the existence of two Americas. One of them is Trump's America. Since the beginning, President Trump wants to solve the issues with negotiations, with talks and everything, but the other America, the deep state or Zionist America, which is the direct control of the Israeli lobbies in the country, made him take his steps back regarding Iran. He lost his game, internal game, Trump, I mean. So far, Trump seems accepted Turkish argument that Syria should have its territorial integrity and a unitary government. If he can defend his position this time, probably Israel is going to stop its airstrikes in Syria.
Okay. Mr. Hakkı Öcal, thank you so much for joining us. I always appreciate your time and contribution.
I thank you for having me. Thank you.
Now, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha says his country is ready to return to the negotiating table with Russia. He emphasised the need for direct talks between the two countries' leaders as the most effective path to a ceasefire. Speaking from Poland, Andriy Sybiha said Kyiv is open to talks in any format and location. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has warned that Trump's new pledge of aid to Ukraine could hinder any peace deal. In Brussels, EU efforts to pass a new sanctions package against Moscow have stalled, raising fresh questions about the bloc's unity on Ukraine.
It would be good if other leaders, primarily President Trump, our European colleagues, President Erdogan, participated in this meeting. And we believe that such a meeting can bring about a qualitative change in achieving, first of all, a ceasefire. A ceasefire on land, at sea, in the air, a long-term ceasefire, which will open the way for further, broader negotiations with the Russian side. We are ready for such negotiations in any format, in any geography, in order to achieve a just peace.
The European Union failed to approve its 18th sanctions package against Russia after Slovakia vetoed the proposal, citing concerns over an EU plan to phase out Russian gas imports by 2027. Slovakia sees the gas phase out as a sanction that should be linked to the new sanctions package. Joining us is Michael Hack. He's a political analyst. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, how does Slovakia's veto impact the EU's unified stance on sanctions against Russia?
It shows a certain weakness. So what we just saw in your reportage before is simply that it's more about really the direct talks now between Ukraine and Russia, which can really help. The European Union, with the veto of Slovakia, but also of Malta, they are weakened, and it's not clear to find here a consensus for this new package. Fico has other interests, and the gas supply is, particularly for Slovakia, an essential point. And it will be hard to negotiate here really a consensus with Slovakia.
And what are the broader implications of this veto for EU-Russia relations?
We will see today. I mean, it's a crucial day today with the meeting between Starmer and Merz in London, where it's all about here the new defense alliance between the UK and Germany and the talks which are going on there. We will need to have a European response now to this weakened position what we have now on the sanction package. There will be a new round and a new try to get other measures in place, but the European Union is clearly weakened without this unity, and we will more rely on the direct talks. That would be my guess.
Okay, and lastly, Michael, what's the EU's plan for phasing out Russian gas imports, and why is it controversial?
It is controversial because in the countries, in the member states, in the European member states, we have a different need for cheap gases. Also here in Germany, we have a large demand from the chemical industry. We are relying on this energy source, and we need a solution for that. In the more eastern countries, or particularly also Slovakia, if you name it, but also Hungary, they are relying as well on these Russian gases. So there's a strong push to find a solution there. And the alternatives are out there. It's importing liquid gases from other countries. But if this is not at the same competitiveness factor like what we had with the Russian gas.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
The Swedish Army is considering raising the age limit for recalling retired officers from 47 to 70 to address an expected wave of retirements. The goal is to tackle looming personnel shortages, especially in logistics, management systems and technical roles. Training programs are already at full capacity, and officials describe this as a historic phase of growth for the military. The plan would apply to those who previously served at least 1 year as career or reserve officers. A major data breach led the United Kingdom to secretly relocate around 7,000 Afghans who had supported British forces. The government says the operation is ending as it no longer sees a significant threat. Ollie Barrett has more from London.
Well, this is a major breach for the UK government in terms of data, potentially one of the most significant data breaches in history. Thousands of people are having to be relocated to the UK because of it and because of some of the concerns for their safety after their details were put out by this breach and then onto parts of the internet. Now, the current UK government is apologising on behalf of the UK, but it also says that it now feels it can bring this secret relocation scheme to a close because it doesn't feel there is a significant danger posed anymore to some of the people named in this list. It will cost, though, hundreds of millions of pounds in total, and there are also questions about the super injunction that was put in place. Some people have called that a form of censorship. This was initially under the previous Conservative government, and the Defence Secretary at the time, Ben Wallace, says he makes no apology for having that injunction in place to safeguard as many of the people named on that list who had previously helped UK forces in Afghanistan as possible. But a major breach, as I say, affecting thousands and thousands of people in Afghanistan. Around 7,000 people in total extra will have come to the UK under this secret relocation scheme after this breach. Ollie Barrett at Downing Street for A News.
Hundreds of farmers marched through Brussels angry over the European Union's latest budget proposal. They say it risks slashing vital agricultural support and are demanding the bloc protect the future of European farming.
In a symbolic protest, European farmers laid their boots outside the European Commission, accusing Brussels of kicking agriculture to the curb. Around 500 farmers from across the bloc marched through the European Quarter on Wednesday, calling for stronger funding guarantees as the EU unveiled its 2028 to 2034 budget. They fear the common agricultural policy, known as the CAP, would lose billions in subsidies, and that a proposed merger of key funds would shift power away from Brussels to national governments.
Everybody is talking Europe needs to get stronger. But how can you get stronger with an empty stomach? If Europe is worrying about the future, Europe should be worrying about the future of our farmers. And for a future for the farmers need a strong budget. Europe enough on their land!
The demonstration, backed by farming unions from Belgium, France, Spain, Ireland, Greece and more, comes amid warnings that climate rules, inflation and red tape are pushing farmers to the brink.
We are living a tough moment. We are living during the difficult geopolitical situation, wars, barriers, tariffs for the citizen. And this is why we are going to ask a strong budget and a strong measures for the future of farmers.
The Commission says billions of euros in direct payments will be protected.
Agriculture will be strengthened. What we have safeguarded are the direct payments to farmers.
But the data shows that the CAP budget for the next spending period will be 300 billion euros. That's down from the current budget of 387 billion euros. Adjusted to 2025 real prices, this represents a reduction of roughly 30%. The final budget still needs approval from all 27 EU countries and the European Parliament. But for now, Europe's farmers say they're not stepping back until Brussels steps up.
Tensions flared and protests erupted in Greenland following renewed US interest in the island. Recent comments by President Donald Trump have sparked nationalist backlash while a new government forms under pressure. At the core is a fight for independence, identity and control of the island's future.
On the streets of Nuuk, Greenlanders wave their red and white flags and chant, "Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders." Protests have swept the island in recent weeks, sparked by controversial remarks from Donald Trump, suggesting that the US would take over Greenland one way or another. Demonstrators have condemned the rhetoric as a return to colonial attitudes, echoing Greenland's long history of foreign control. The backlash intensified with the arrival of US Vice President J.D. Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance. Their visit to the US military's Pawtucket Space Base, rather than any Greenlandic community, fueled accusations of disrespect and imperial intent. Many Greenlanders still recall the environmental damage left behind by past American military activity, from nuclear weapons stockpiles to the 1968 B-52 crash near Thule Air Base. Today, those memories are resurfacing with force. The protests were about more than Trump. They reflect deeper frustrations with lingering Danish control. Despite gaining home rule in 1979 and self-government in 2009, Denmark still oversees Greenland's foreign affairs and military presence. Now, more voices are calling for full independence and for an end to centuries of foreign exploitation, from Danish missionaries to American soldiers. With only 57,000 Greenlanders on the planet, the stakes are high. But through protest, politics and cultural revival, Greenland is sending a message that its future cannot be bought, occupied or controlled. It must be chosen by the people who call it home.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan held a lengthy press conference in Yerevan today, addressing key issues, including peace talks with Azerbaijan, Armenia's foreign alliances and its aspirations toward European Union membership.
At a press conference in Armenia's capital, Yerevan, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan confirmed that the draft peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan has been finalized, with negotiations on the text now complete. Consultations are ongoing to determine the next steps and to outline a clear roadmap. Pashinyan said a preliminary signing of the agreement remains a possibility, but only if Armenia's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and state interests are fully respected. The Prime Minister also addressed plans to open transport and trade routes linking Armenia and Azerbaijan, including transit through each other's territories and international communications.
Our position in general is that Armenia is interested in and supports the opening of transport communications in the region, including from Armenia to Armenia through the territory of Azerbaijan, from Azerbaijan to Azerbaijan through the territory of Armenia, as well as bilateral trade turnover and international communication from Armenia through Azerbaijan to third countries, and vice versa.
On the security front, Pashinyan stated that Armenia is more likely to withdraw from the Collective Security Treaty Organization than to resume its membership. Turning to Armenia's European Union ambitions, the Prime Minister reiterated the country's goal to join the European Union. He acknowledged the process is complex and requires unanimous approval from all EU member states. Armenia is actively pursuing reforms to meet EU criteria, and its parliament has passed legislation to begin the membership process. However, Pashinyan noted that Armenia will eventually face a choice between membership in the Eurasian Economic Union and the European Union, a decision that will be made in the future.
And now we're joined by Ahmed Alili. He's the director of Caucasus Policy Analysis Center from Baku, Azerbaijan. Mr. Alili, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Now, perhaps more importantly, Prime Minister Pashinyan expressed regrets over the belated recognition by Armenia of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, including Karabakh. Could this somehow change the approach maintained by Baku regarding the peace process?
Absolutely. I believe, first of all, it's a message to the internal audience saying that for a long time Armenia didn't know where its borders lie. So when Armenia didn't know where its borders are, it means that it could not protect it properly. Mm-hmm. So that is why he wanted to explain it to the internal audience that why it is important Armenia recognizing territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, because by doing so you are automatically recognizing your own borders, and he presented it as a great success for Armenia itself. So that is why he wanted to show that all of those issues, that losing Karabakh, having a military defeat, etc., that is not something negative for Armenia. In contrary, he wanted to present it as some sort of liberation from the old chains, etc. So especially, but for Azerbaijan, of course, like that, it sends a message that he's different. He's different, of course. Azerbaijan had experienced certain Armenian leaders who would have a complete different position on so many issues. So in that context, he's quite different leader. He's a leader which Azerbaijan would prefer to talk to. He genuinely wants to build relations with Azerbaijan and Turkey. So these are the important messages that Azerbaijan is going to carry out from this press conference, and of course it's going to positively affect Azerbaijani-Armenian relations, and it's a demonstration of that mental shift that is taking place in Armenia right now.
Now, Pashinyan, in his statement to the media, talked about the existence of certain forces inside Russia willing to force Yerevan into actions against its own free will. He also emphasized his relations with the Russian leader. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I believe it's also part of the wider context that is taking place in Armenia right now, because most of the people, most of the opposition representatives now accuse them of selling out Armenian sovereignty to America, because there are talk about the possible American involvement alongside Zangezur corridor. American companies might be outsourced. They might be companies that's going to oversee all of those developments, so there will be certain outsourcing to these companies, certain responsibilities. Now the opposition criticized Armenian government in, acting against state, acting against national interest. So in this context, I would say that he had to show that, okay, if not America, there would be more Russian presence. And I believe it is his answer to Armenian opposition representatives who criticize him about having more American involvement around the process. He kind of like that tries to show that you want more Russian presence, and these are the actions that Russia wants us to take. So it means that if we do something, if we do not do cooperation with Azerbaijan, Turkey, and America on this issue, there are something much more like that, much bigger and worse coming from Russian side. So I believe that's also a message addressed to the internal audience.
And lastly, it appears that Pashinyan has indicated his readiness to allow a third party to oversee the movement of people and cargo through the Zangezur passage, contradicting the position previously articulated by his foreign ministry. Are you surprised by this? What are your thoughts?
Well, because of the number of the messages from Armenia on this issue, we are not sure which message is the main one, which messages should be reviewed as, the people that are not aware of the details of the agreement, they might not present Armenian position to the society in a right way. So that is why some people in the Armenian government, they confirmed it, then they say that this is not true. Then we are seeing our Armenian Prime Minister basically saying that it is true. There will be presence of the American company alongside the Zangezur border. So it is very important that we understand one issue in our in Armenian policy in the recent decade, that especially in the last 8 years under Prime Minister Pashinyan's leadership, Armenian foreign policy would send certain messages outside, see the reaction. If the public likes the reaction, then they would confirm it. If the public doesn't like it, so they would not repeat it, right? So this is how they work. This is how Armenian diplomacy works for the last couple of, for the last decade, especially since Prime Minister Pashinyan's time in office. But I believe that it is a great message to everyone in the region and outside of the region that Armenia and Azerbaijan are close to reaching an agreement. There will be much bigger involvement of United States. And I believe that much bigger involvement of the United States, it's a positive message to the investors outside in European Union, United States, that they can freely invest into this regional project that Azerbaijan intends to build together with Turkey and of course with Armenia and Georgia. So I believe that this is one of the beginnings in the page of the region's history.
Okay, Mr. Ahmed Alili, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
A massive fire at a hypermarket in the city of Al-Qut, eastern Iraq, has killed at least 61 people and left several others missing, according to the Interior Ministry. Civil defence teams rescued 45 people from the burning building, but recovery efforts have been hampered by extensive damage. 14 charred bodies have been recovered so far, and more victims may still be trapped under the debris. The cause of the fire is under investigation, and 3 days of mourning have been declared in Wasit province. Emergency crews continue to battle multiple wildfires in Turkey as soaring heat and strong winds make containing flames challenging. The fire near Balıkesir has prompted people to evacuate their homes, while another in Tekirdağ has entered its second day.
Firefighting teams in western Turkey are battling a fast-moving forest fire that erupted on Wednesday near the city of Balıkesir. Strong winds and dry conditions continue to fuel a growing wildfire crisis across the country. The blaze broke out in a wooded area on the outskirts of the town near the neighbouring district of Savaştepe. Authorities say the fire spread rapidly due to intense winds, prompting a large-scale emergency response. According to local media, heavy equipment has been deployed to the site alongside roughly 150 firefighting personnel. Further north in Tekirdağ's Şarköy district, aircraft and ground crews have been battling a wildfire since Tuesday, which forced the evacuation of people from 3 villages. Wind gusts up to 30 kilometers an hour have hampered containment efforts. Several people were hospitalized for smoke inhalation, and firefighting operations by air and land are ongoing. Turkey has seen a surge in wildfires this summer, especially in western and coastal areas, where extreme heat, low humidity and dry vegetation have fueled dozens of blazes. In Izmir, 2 people died earlier this month when flames reached residential neighbourhoods. As the peak of summer approaches, Turkish authorities remain on high alert, warning that hot and windy conditions in the weeks ahead could trigger further outbreaks.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has hosted United Arab Emirates President His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in Ankara for talks on regional and global issues. The talks resulted in 7 new cooperation agreements.
Turkey and the United Arab Emirates are deepening their cooperation in key sectors by signing 7 new agreements. It's after Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan hosted UAE President His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in Ankara this week in a state visit. Bilateral talks focused on strengthening ties and addressed regional and global challenges. The 2 leaders met at the presidential complex, where an official ceremony was held in His Highness's honor. Erdogan held the growing partnership, which he said was rooted in his 2023 visit to the Gulf state. He noted progress in trade, defense, energy and transportation, and expressed confidence that bilateral trade would surpass $20 billion this year. That target follows data showing the UAE was Turkey's fastest growing export market by value in the first half of 2025. The leaders also discussed regional developments, including the situation in Gaza. Among the signed agreements were memoranda on investment in tourism, pharmaceuticals, agriculture and manufacturing, as well as a deal on joint consular coordination. Defense ministers also joined an agreement on mutual protection of classified information, and the 2 countries pledged to collaborate on polar research through their respective technology ministries.
The European Commission has formally warned Georgia that its visa-free regime with the EU could be suspended unless key reforms are made by the end of August. In a letter to Foreign Minister Maka Bochorshvili, Brussels urged the Georgian Dream government to repeal laws targeting civil society, strengthen anti-corruption efforts and align with EU visa policy. The warning follows a July 15th meeting of EU foreign ministers in Brussels. The Commission says Georgia's 2017 visa-free status is now under review due to serious breaches of fundamental rights, and failure to act could trigger Article 8 of the EU visa regulation, that is, suspending visa-free travel for Georgian citizens. The National Bank of Kazakhstan is preparing to launch a state crypto reserve. The country's authorities are considering investing part of their gold and foreign currency reserves, along with assets from the National Fund, into the crypto industry. Fariza Karamurzina has more details in a report from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is moving forward with plans to establish a state crypto reserve. The National Bank is exploring the possibility of investing a portion of the country's gold and foreign currency reserves, as well as assets from the National Fund into cryptocurrencies. This was confirmed by the regulator's head, Timur Süleymanov. He explained that some assets are already managed with bolder strategies aiming for higher returns. As a reference, the National Bank studied the practices of major funds in the US, Norway and Middle Eastern countries, where cryptocurrencies are often part of investment portfolios, either directly or through funds, stocks or ETFs. Kazakhstan doesn't rule out doing the same in the future. However, as Süleymanov emphasized, crypto assets remain high risk and require a cautious approach. One of the new initiatives is the creation of a crypto reserve where digital assets seized during criminal and administrative cases will be deposited. A dedicated infrastructure will be developed to store and manage these assets. Another idea under discussion is transferring some of the cryptocurrency mined by state-owned companies to the fund, potentially as a tax or required payment. Launching the crypto reserve fully will require changes to the law. The National Bank is ready to engage with lawmakers to define the fund's legal status, funding sources, and rules for using the assets. At the same time, Kazakhstan is drafting a law on artificial intelligence, which will introduce administrative and criminal penalties for illegal crypto operations. Currently, digital asset trading in Kazakhstan is allowed only through licensed platforms at the Astana International Financial Center. And according to the regulator, more than 15,000 grey-marked transactions valued at around $3.7 million were blocked in the first quarter of 2025 alone. Fariza Karamurzina, A News, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
An original A News documentary, Caspian Time, was awarded in a national media competition. The author and presenter of the film, journalist Leyla Rahimli, took the first place for its episode about the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railway. The contest, held in honour of the 145th anniversary of Azerbaijan Railways and the 150th anniversary of National Press. The documentary tells the story of a vital railway corridor that connects Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey. By connecting regions, boosting trade and strengthening cooperation, the BTK railway plays a pivotal role in linking Asia and Europe. For more details, you can watch Baku-Tbilisi-Kars episode of the Caspian Time on A News from all platforms. That's all we have time for now from Baku. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.